Hey everybody, Bob Ciccarello back with Sugar Sean Ray, Hall of Famer. Another exciting edition of Monday Night Muscle. And this, Sean, a huge episode, our biggest to date. We are T-minus 1 week out of the Olympia. I couldn't be more excited. But even more than that, we've got not one, not two, but three of the all-time greatest Olympias on this episode. And of course, we're going to start it all off with the man himself, truly a cut above, Sean. Jay Cutler joins us in the studio. What's up, Jay?
How are you guys? I have a lot of monikers. Sean's given me a couple of monikers. I used to be a cut above. Yeah. I was the ultimate beat. I was every.
You were everything. You were also a hog when it came to winning competitions, Jay. I don't want to. I know you know your resume well, but a lot of people might not be up on the historical side, which Bob and I are. We witnessed it. You know, you won 3 Arnold Classics and 4 Mr. Olympias. One of the few guys to actually win the Mr. Olympia, lose the Olympia, and win the Olympia back.
He beat Ronnie Coleman.
And you beat Ronnie Coleman. I mean, that's literally, that was unheard of at the time. However, while Bob was earning his pro card, Jay, we were on stage in Las Vegas in 2001, where arguably I thought you should have been Mr. Olympia in 2001. Did you know that?
Listen, me and Jay competed as amateurs together, actually.
Well, he's been around. He's also teenage national champion, went up against Branch Warren back in the day. You also won the New York Pro, which nobody ever talks about.
That's right.
So you got a very colorful resume, Jay. Was there one that got away? I mean, it seems like you've won everything. You've been everywhere. Which contest sticks in your craw? I mean, I keep thinking about the 2001 Olympia. But for you tell me which one stands out that did not happen for you.
I think 2001 definitely, but you know, I skipped out on 2002. If you remember, I sat out. I moved to Vegas that year, and it was questionable. I mean, that was the year we saw Gunter rise, and you know, he ended up beating Ronnie, not this stage, but shortly after. And I think that could have been a great window for me. But you know, 2001 gave me a lot of momentum. I went and won the Arnold the next year. I was pretty satisfied with that. It kind of solidified, you know, what I felt at the Olympia. But I'll be honest, I mean, being second to the best bodybuilder probably of all time is still was an achievement then, and still I look back and reflect and say, you know what, it wasn't as bad as maybe others thought it was.
Jay, we're gonna skip around a little bit here between the past and the present and the future, but most people want to know, what does Jay Cutler do these days? Now, I've known you personally, and Sean, of course, for many years. We know you dabble in a whole lot of different business, but maybe you can bring the people up to date on what exactly you're into business-wise, how you spend your days in the office.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with a lot of branding. I'm doing stuff in and out of fitness. As you know, I mean, my hands in fitness. I do supplements, I do clothing, I do show promotions. You know, I'm working with, you know, a club membership type platform. I do ebooks. I've done pretty much everything in fitness that you can think of. I do some nutritional advisement. It kind of bounces around, but you know, my real day-to-day is just really kind of managing the brands. I do still some real estate investment. I do some medical lean business. I did some ammo manufacturing the last few years. I mean, I've been in the cannabis industry for about 5 years. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm doing that I don't really advertise as much. But when I retired from bodybuilding at 40, and I kind of stepped away, and now my life is just managed day to day, but I don't punch a clock. I take trips when I want to. I still travel quite a bit prior to the year we've obviously had, which now has gotten a lot better, as you know. But, you know, I'm pretty much just, you know, living the life of a retired former champion and still giving back to probably what my passion and you know, what set me up with the lifestyle that I have, and that's, you know, bodybuilding fitness.
Well, you look like you still possess the weapons of mass destruction. You don't look like you're missing too many meals or workouts for that matter. What's the physical side look like for you on a weekly basis?
Pretty much I do cardio every morning. I do at least 40 minutes of cardiovascular, whether it's walking outside or my home gym or hitting the gym. And then I'll pick up weights at least you know, once a day, 6 days a week, which lately I honestly trained about 10 days in a row with weights. I still stay on a pretty strict diet, although I don't eat 6 or 7 meals anymore. I still eat small portionate meals. The protein amounts are very little, but I do feed myself sufficiently enough to fuel the workouts. But I believe a lot of it comes from the trend. It's just for the past 25 years of just training and having the passion to look good and feel good. And, you don't deviate much from the diet, because if you do, it's a much different physique.
Jay, I want to go back and revisit your last Olympia. When you were on stage at that point, I remember distinctly, because I was only 10 feet away from you. But
2010?
Yes, I believe that was right. Right, Jay?
2010? Yeah.
2010. I remember a point during the show that you actually reached down and you kind of rubbed the ground, almost like an outfielder grabbing the grass for the last time on the field. Take me back to that moment.
Yeah, so that was 2013, right? Actually, which was the last competitive year for me. I knew it would be the last, and I knew I was going to retire. Shoot, I thought after I lost to Phil Heath in 11, I skipped 12. It was questionable whether I was going to come back after a bicep injury. And, I was able to perform. Sean actually predicted I wouldn't do that show that year.
You're right. I've been wrong before.
Yeah,
go ahead.
a couple times.
Yeah. So I actually only did the show just to discredit Sean.
Yeah,
right?
I motivated you. That felt good, right?
Well, that moment that I saw, that I witnessed, though, was that symbolic for you?
We competed there. Won my first Olympia there, and I was finishing out. And as you know, we've now changed venues. Yeah. Probably never go back to that venue again. And the Olympia stage really meant. That was my lifelong dream from the time I picked up weights at 18, and I battled, for many years to get there. And I thought I'd win a lot sooner. I was wishful. It was wishful thinking, actually. And then to achieve the Mr. Olympia, knowing that, hey, this is the last time I'm going to grace these stages in posing trunks and in the competition mindset, it was historical for me. To hear those fans. If you asked me today, Bob, what I missed the most, it was the cheers and the audience response when you would make, and fortunately, through my career, you were announcing most of those shows.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, Jay, from Las Vegas, Jay Cutler. I'm the hometown guy, and it was just the crowd response is truly the only thing I miss dearly about competing at the Mr. Olympia stage.
Your first Olympia victory, 2006?
Yes.
Yeah, Bob hadn't made it to the mic yet. That was me. Nonetheless, I was there when you won that championship and took it from Ronnie Coleman, which a lot of people just thought it was never, ever going to happen. So you making that history and paving the way, I don't want to diminish the fact that these younger bodybuilders competing in the Olympia for the first, fifth, 10th time, you're a 6-time first Olympia runner-up, which some people never recover from being a 1-time Olympia runner-up. I remember Bertil Fox, his career was ruined when he got 5th in 1983 at the Olympia. He couldn't wrap his head around it. Mike Mincer, Australia, 5th place. Yeah. Arnold did a number on him. He couldn't recover to come back to try to do it again and again. You got 2nd place, a record 6 times, and Kevin Levrone was a 4-time first runner-up. Did it set the stage for you to go on and on that run? You just kept coming back, because while the validation didn't happen on the Olympia stage because you're behind a Hall of Famer and Ronnie Coleman, the Arnold Classic had to be redemptive for you, and those victories had to give you the confidence that it's just a matter of time before you win.
Yeah, I kind of paced myself a little bit. The 2nd places, because they're broken, we talk about 6, but 4 to the same guy,
right?
Ronnie. So 4 were somewhat consecutive, even though I got 2nd in 01, and then I skipped 02, and then it was 3, 4, and 5 before I landed my 1st place, and then of course I lost to Dexter and Phil Heath, which made a total of 6. So for me, there was the major 3 that were in a row year after year to Ronnie, where yes, it was frustrating, but it's questionable whether I was hanging on long enough in order to dethrone this guy, which I knew I could.
Yeah.
But I didn't necessarily think, okay, this guy's getting older. I just thought, okay, I truly thought I was going to get better. And I'll be honest, and it may seem arrogant or irresponsible for me to say, I truly went to every show to win, Sean. Even the first Olympia in '99 when I placed, 15 out of 16. I think the only guy I beat was Jean-Pierre Fuchs that year.
Right.
I was not thinking I was going to get a call out with you and Ronnie, all these guys.
Jay, we were just as surprised as you were when you got the call out. We're like, where did you come from?
Yeah, right.
I mean, the transformation was crazy because you went from 9th to 2nd.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know. I don't have an answer for. I was able to, luckily, and I don't know if you realize this. You're a historian, and Bob is just as well. But I was able to draw the consecutive number next to Ronnie Coleman in the lineup. So when they brought us all out, I think he was 12 and I was 13. So when I stood there from the front, in that, and we were consecutive numbers, people were like, "Wow,
you were holding it.
Looks good." And I'm not sure if I actually would have got the call that I got to be in the top line if I wasn't standing next to Ronnie and really kind of, you know, exposing his weaknesses at that contest in 2001.
Well, just to correct you, Sean, all right?
Here we go.
We were both on the stage.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, don't you get half credit. Okay?
Good memory, all right.
Only because of your height. That said, and me and Jay have talked about this because people have asked me over the years, as they've asked you many times, your thoughts. What was the loudest you've ever heard the crowd at the Olympia? And my answer has always been the same and consistent. It was the first year that Jay won.
Yes.
I could feel the percussion from the crowd when we announced Jay as the winner. The place went absolutely, it felt like everybody moved forward like 10 feet, like you could feel it.
Yeah.
But for the first time, now keep in mind, we got to go back to the day now. People don't like people that win over and over and over. They start to hate you after a while, right? It's happened with Phil. It's happened with anybody who's won consecutive
Mike
Olympias,
Tyson,
right?
yeah.
Right, Tyson, they start rooting against you. So we were used to the last couple of years that by the time the announcement even came out that Ronnie Coleman was the 6-time, 7-time
people were already on the way out.
Half the people were gone. We announced Jay. The place goes absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Here comes Jim Mannion, man holding the sand out, right? The whole thing. Here's Jay. Nobody left.
Yeah.
The whole place was on their feet. You remember this, I'm sure vividly, Jay. Your thoughts from that moment when you looked out there, Sandow in front of you, and the entire place, 10,000 people were standing up waiting for you to say something.
Yeah, you gave me chills actually when you just talk about that. That's how much that actually means to me. And Sean, you know, being on the stage over and over and over, like, you know, can you imagine when you were shooting, you were second before, but for me, it's like your whole career flashes. Like you see those movies and, you know, you see like all the training and the good and the bad, because it's not easy, let's be real. And next thing you know, I mean, I'm winning, and then I'm more concerned about how Ronnie's going to react. I'm trying to take in the moment, and of course I'm thinking, okay, what are we going to say for a speech? Because I have so much to say. And but I want to be respectful at the same time. So it's funny, my business mind kicks in a little bit saying, okay, I need to be professional about how I respond and how thankful I truly am, and not just try to say I knew I was coming to the show, because I knew I was going to win. Let's put it that way. I knew coming into 06 that I was going to win this title. I was sure of it. Well,
you've always been very articulate and gracious in defeat and victory. You were as steady in defeat as you were in victory. When Phil Heath knocked you off your pedestal, you stood there like a man and gave him his props. You knew what he was experiencing, and it was almost a changing of the guard because you knew him before he became Mr. Olympia. What did it feel like? Did it feel like I'm passing the torch? Did it feel like, oh, you got me this year, I'm coming back? What was going through your mind then when you were announced second?
Yeah, by that point, Sean, I was so proud for Phil because I had seen him come from the bottom of, you know, turning pro and working his way up the ladder, right? But for me, so that was kind of victory because I felt like I kind of mentored him in some sort of way, not necessarily the training or the nutrition, but I mentored him to kind of mold him into the man that he is, right? And I think that was kind of a success for me. But I'll be honest, by that point, and I can clearly say it today, I had almost lost the passion for the bodybuilding side as much. I knew this was closer to the end than the beginning. I was starting to look at other avenues to take my career further, and that was not reliant on the bodybuilding stages. So for me, it was kind of like a sense of happiness, sadness, and almost a sense of relief too, because that weight on your shoulders of being Mr. Olympia, it can take a toll on you sometimes, on your relationships, your family, everything. And you get to a certain age and things become more relevant than in the past. And I think that's what I realized at that point. So I could say I was happy and I was sad and I was kind of relieved all at the same time.
So Jay, we're going to go full circle before we get into the Olympia coming up. From your first Olympia to your last Olympia, a lot of us thought it might be your last Olympia. You didn't seem to be too sure kind of one way or the other. I think some of you wanted to call it your day. Some of you didn't. I remember you and I having a conversation before you went out, and I actually asked you, do you want to say something? You know, like if, you know, and you were kind of like, well, I don't know. And I says, well, look, I'm going to give you the mic. You kind of do whatever you want. I'm not going to put you on the spot. And that's kind of where we left it. But take me back to that final Olympia.
I don't know. I just kind of didn't feel like I wanted to announce the retirement on stage. I kind of wanted, I guess, to leave an open door, because I've seen too many guys retire and say, hey, this is the end. And I still felt I had some gas in the tank. If I would have taken more time to train for that show, I still think I could have placed better. And granted, I think I got almost a little push to be in the 6th spot. You know, I beat a couple guys, Rolly and Ronnie.
Yeah, you were battling Rolly for that. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys probably were better than I was then. I'll be honest. And you remember that was the hottest year for Ronnie. It was.
Right.
You know, he came off New York Pro that year. So I just, you know, I don't know, man. I take him back and, you know, asking me this question now, and I kind of say, damn, why didn't I just retire on stage?
I know. And the thing is, you know, we go back so far that I wanted to be respectful of your decision. Yeah, and I remember, like I said, I remember us kind of going back and forth, because I wanted you to take that moment if that's what you wanted to do. But I didn't want to push you into it either. You know, I wanted that respect level as we've always had for each other.
Yeah, and you know, I didn't give a speech, did I?
Well, you said something, but you kind of fell short of saying, you know, it was kind of like one of those, hey, it's been great to be on the Olympia stage, and I really appreciate the fans in Las Vegas for coming out and supporting. It was a very PC.
Cryptic.
All right, I'm not saying I'm not coming back, and I'm not saying I am coming back, but it was very Jay Cutler.
Then the next thing I saw you at some clubs.
Yeah, and you were
partying it up.
I think now thinking back, and I've kind of lost thought process, and sometimes that's as you get a little older and things become more, like I said, more relevant in life. But I think I didn't want to deal with these emotions that people would be sad. You know what I mean?
Right.
I didn't want to take from another victory of Phil Heath. I didn't want to take from the other guys, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't want this to come down as like, okay, I didn't want the headlines to be Jay Cutler officially retires on the stage. I think that's truly why I didn't want to do it, Bob, is that I didn't want people to give me a standing ovation, and I didn't want all that stuff, man. Because I knew I wasn't leaving the industry. Like, I was going to be back there the next year, whether I was on or off stage, and I was still going to be as you know, relevant as I was competing, probably even more. So, and as you see, I haven't left. I mean, I've still been active, and I've still been at every Olympia since. So for me, I just didn't want that recognition at that moment. That's just me being me. You know,
Sean, we always talk about Lee Haney being the gentleman that he was and a professional, and we'll have Lee up a little bit later in this program. But Jay's always been right there, too. Now, what an unselfish thought process. At that time, calling it a career, I think you knew in your heart, Jay, that was pretty much it for you. But he didn't want to take away from the victory by putting himself in that spot. I think that's you know, very professional, and again, Jay, for those of us that know you, no surprise at all.
Yeah, and Jay, you celebrated a birthday August 3rd this past summer. How old are you now?
47.
47 years old. So we are looking, we're looking at the future of bodybuilding right now. We're going into the 56th Mr. Olympia, 11 years older than you are, the year Bob and I was born, 1965. And Brandon Curry's defending the title. Phil Heath is coming back to try to recapture the title and win number 8. Of course, old man Dexter at 51 years old has got a little bit more gas in the tank, on record that this may be his last, trying to get one more. He was the guy that defeated you, for those that haven't been following bodybuilding and living under a rock. It was Dexter that upset you in 2008, I believe it was, for the title. There's a lot of things that play. William Bonek, Hadi Chupin. How do you see this year's Olympia playing out? We were talking about Lee Haney's history. He's pretty much the only one that won the Olympia and walked off into the sunset at 31 years old with 8 titles. Do you see Brandon Curry being able to hold off Phil Heath after a 2-year layoff? Do you see Dexter Jackson being better than he was when he got second at the Arnold Classic earlier in the year at 51 years old? How do you see this shaping up?
It's a great question. I think if I had a crystal ball, I wish I could give those answers. But listen, if anyone's walking in with the best advantage, normally it's the guy winning, right? Last year. The problem is you have kind of an awkward thing where a guy had won the title 6 times, and now he's coming back to reclaim that. I think Phil Heath is in the driver's seat to come back and dominate this contest.
He's won it 7 times, by the way. 7 times.
Seven-time winner.
Yeah.
Going for tying the record, I think that gives him a little more hunger, right? But you have Brandon Curry, who's a beast. I mean, he definitely he deserved it last year, and I just feel Phil has a lot of detail that a lot of the guys don't necessarily carry, and I just feel he has the experience. So it's going to be a battle for sure. I mean, I expect those two to battle it out, but I mean, Bonnick's been knocking at the door, and you talk about Dexter, who I don't know if he's as good as he was in 2008 when he won the title, but he's definitely one of those guys that always kind of puts us in our place when we say, oh, we're not sure how Dexter would do, and he seems to show up in one of the top spots. But then you got Chupin. I mean, Chupin pushed all these guys last year.
Did.
3rd place.
Yeah, but you took time off, Jay. You took time off after a consecutive run. Phil's coming off of literally 2 years of inactivity competition-wise, not even guest posing. Doesn't he have a bigger hill to climb trying to come back off of 2 years?
No, he kept training the whole time, and I think that Phil is a whole different bodybuilder, and I have to praise his genetics versus mine. I just think that Phil Heath is probably the most genetically gifted Mr. Olympia we've probably ever seen, and I feel he definitely has the advantage to definitely win this. I have no question in my mind. I just listen. Brandon goes over to Kuwait and he trains. That's what he's kind of doing that whole Rocky thing, but I'm not sure, Phil, he's staying at home doing his thing. He knows he has the formula, so I don't question his ability to come back and win it.
Yeah, Brandon has the formula too, I might add. He hasn't just started going to Kuwait. He's been going to Kuwait. He's won the Arnold Classic in Ohio. He's won the Arnold Classic in Australia. He's won it down in Brazil. He's won the Ferrigno Classic.
There's a few things up for debate, Jay, and I'm with you on that. I don't think the 2-year layoff is going to hurt Phil Heath. I think the motivation to tie the all-time record is enough to get the title back. I think $400,000
coming off of 2 years of consecutive surgery.
Well, here's the question, right? Brandon Curry has never beaten Phil Heath.
Correct.
Now, that said, Phil Heath has never faced this Brandon Curry. So this is going to be a real good matchup, number one. But I just want to go back to that last Olympia that Phil loses against Sean Roden. Now, the speculation out there, Jay, and I'm sure you've heard this many times or even thought so yourself when you watched it, was that the only reason that Phil Heath loses to Sean Roden, who had never got a point off him,
2018,
right, was that his midsection was a problem. Now, if he fixes the midsection, which, again, we don't know until we see it.
It was a 2-year consecutive problem.
Is that enough, Jay? Is that enough to get this record?
Yeah, I think Phil can come in like his stomach was and win this contest, in my opinion.
Interesting.
That's a good take, yeah.
I don't think he'd have to fix anything, in my opinion. I think Phil Heath, listen, Sean Roden's not there. So, once again, he doesn't have to battle him. And I just think, Phil, I think he'll be better than he was. There's no reason for him to come back. If he's not going to be better than when he lost that title to Roden, he's not going to come back. So we can say the what ifs or whatever else. Phil, he's coming like a train.
But we're on the week of the competition, and the last week is crucial. A lot of things can go wrong. The year I thought you should have won it in 2001, Ronnie Coleman was in a bathtub full of ice, cramping up, and nearly did not make it to the stage. So, Jay, how crucial is this prep, the final week of the Olympia for these guys? Is it dangerous? Is it somewhere where you can make some last-minute mistakes the final week of the contest?
I mean, we've all been through those, Sean. Like, we felt better or worse at certain shows, but I still think, you know, looking back at, you know, Phil, he's worse. Like, he still beats everybody. You know what I mean? So, I mean, Bob, you seem to be on, you know, I know being a critic or whatever, it's 2-year layoff, losing before, you know, sitting out, Sean, like you said, 2 years. You know, Phil, he's still Phil Heath. His worst is still better than else, in my opinion.
Which brings me to this question, Jay, because but just my own opinion on it, but people ask, of course. To be honest, I didn't have Phil losing against Sean Roden. I still had him, even though Phil wasn't at his best, I still thought that he beat him in the majority of the poses. Yes, the midsection was not what it was back in 012, 013, but the overall package, I thought, and a lot of people, again, on both sides of that coin, thought Phil should not be going to equal the record right now, but should be going for number 9 at this point. It passes the pass here, but your thoughts on him losing to Roden?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand it. The stomach was a little glaring then. I see both. Yeah, I agree with you. He beat him on, like, from the backside, he won all those poses from the side. Yep. You know, it's just, the midsection was just a glaring, it was a glaring point of his frontal poses. And, you know, I don't think Phil Heath has the best frontal bicep. I think Brandon Curry on that pose,
Agreed,
right?
Yeah.
But what else does he really lose on? You know, he's got the thighs, he's got everything else. And listen, I'm not saying Phil Heath's going to be as great as 2011 was his best.
Yes,
there's no.
I agree.
You asked me, Phil Heath never. I mean, if you looked at 2013, 14, 15, he was never the same because he had both combination of size, the definition, and he had the aesthetics in 11. If he never grew from that point, he'd never be beaten again. There's no question. But the problem is, we all play the size game. I was victim of this. Ronnie Coleman was victim of this. Dorian Yates was victim of this. And unfortunately, Sean, you weren't victim of this. You stayed pretty much.
And I actually thought your best was in 2001. However, your best pose made the cover of Muscular Development. Remember that? Was that taken at the Pro Ironman? The Muscular Development cover
that was
where
the
you're
Olympia.
flexing the thigh?
That's the Olympia.
Yeah, that's the Olympia 9. I mean,
that was beautiful.
So we all fall victim to that, and you know. But I just think, you know, unless Brandon's really improved in the year, which I expect him to, as Mr. Olympia, improve. I expect Hottie to improve. I expect Bonnick. I mean, he's a little limited because of his structure, but we're leaving out someone that's going to surprise us all. I mean, we can talk about the people that have been there the past 4 or 5 years, including the Dexter who's been there the past, you know, 15, 20 years. You know, I don't know. I mean, Dexter's been in California training for 16 weeks instead of the normal 12 weeks. And, you know, he's hungry. This may be his last. I don't know. I keep hearing that he may not retire, but.
There we go.
Same old song. 21 years on that stage.
I think he's done. I mean, I think this is a good exit time for him. I don't think he's going to pull the old, maybe I'll do one more thing. I think Dexter's finished, but. Are there any other names that stick out, Jay, as a dark horse? I mean, we do have some other players in there. We have the Ruly Winklers, Big Rami we've been talking about for years.
Special invite.
Will we see him materialize? Steve Kuklo. We've got some of the new guys who've just qualified.
Hunter Labrada, Ian Valieri, Antoine Vallier, Akim Williams. Akeem Williams, the boy from upstairs.
He's one big boy.
Some new talent.
I mean, out of that top 3 or 4, there's going to be a battle like we've never seen, but... I expect Big Rami to be, he's a contender. I mean, Rolly, I picked Rolly to win last year.
People's champ.
And again, here's the guy that was supposed to be in the Arnold Classic, had a hamstring injury. Some of these guys don't make it to the finish line because they overpush themselves as well, but nonetheless, it's going to be a contest for the ages because there's so many different storylines. It's great to see that you haven't left. You continue to give back to the sport of bodybuilding. We're going to catch up with you this weekend, get your take on it, try to find out what the perspective is, especially after prejudging. If we can track you down, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Friday before we get to the Saturday night finals to see where all these guys are lining up.
Let's get we got to put Jay on the spot. You got to get on the hot box. We got to do the prediction thing. Jay, at the end of the day, in 1 week's time,
here comes the politician.
2 guys in the center. Again, this is ground that you've been on many times, my friend. The next name you hear will be You're a new Mr. Olympia. Who's it going to be, Jay?
It's going to be between Phil and Brandon, I think.
Thanks for helping us out. We appreciate that.
I don't think I asked him who was going to be between.
That's the politician, I told you.
I do believe I asked him who was going to be. Who's the final name, Jay?
Jay's going to run for office.
Come on.
I would say Phil Heath. I would say that's. I'm going to, and that's no disrespect to the current champ, but he's. I think my prediction will be correct.
All right.
If
the Denver Nugget.
If he goes and wins 8. Should he come back and try to beat it and get 9?
Man, I may have to pitch in some money for him to do that.
I mean, listen, that's a tough question because, listen, he's on hallowed ground at that point. Winning 9 would obviously be the all-time. We'd probably never see that broken in our lifetimes. But it's a lot. We've talked to other Olympians in the past, and there comes a point where they go, you know what? I'm done.
Isn't it something that, like you talked about the weight of the crown, isn't that something he's going to have to wait until maybe, if he wins, that you pretty much have to wait till January to even process what that would look like?
Yeah, listen, it comes down to the battle. If the battle's as close or there's someone that moves up that's knocking at the door that shocks us, I'm going to pat myself in the back and say, hey, I moved up from 8th to 2nd place in 2001, and Sean, you were there.
Yeah.
Did you expect it? Did Kevin expect it?
No.
Did all you guys know? And so now I became the new contender that took over the spot. We could see on a Labrada or Akeem or one of these guys could move up and be the next contender.
It's one of the great ones, Jay. We appreciate your input. Congratulations on all the things you got going on. Are you getting high on your own supply with that whole CBD business? That's money, baby. I know you're rolling in the dough. Bob's going to want to try some product when he gets there.
It's like New Jack City over there.
We thank you for joining us, and hopefully we can catch up with you this weekend. But right now, we got another champion chiming in.
And that, of course, is 8-time Mr. Olympia. Some say the greatest Olympia champion of all time. My friend Lee Haney. What's up, Lee?
Hey, what's happening? Glad to be on the show. How y'all brothers doing?
We're doing good, man. 1982, you were the original NPC national champion. Prior to that, you were a teenage national champion. And before that, you were playing football. And then you came into bodybuilding professionally to ruin everyone's dreams, Lee. You ruined our dreams.
Just yours. See? How about that?
Man.
Well, man, it was one of those things. Hey, I didn't have nothing else to do. The coach said, get out there, Haney, and break a leg.
Yeah.
I broke one my junior year in high school. I broke the other leg my senior year in high school. So only thing I could do was just hang out in the weight room. So here we go.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You made a lot of dreams come true, making memories for a lot of great guys. I got to witness the tail end of that magnificent run that you had, which eclipsed Arnold Schwarzenegger's 7 championships back there in 1990. You tied him in Chicago and broke it in 91 and retired at the ripe old age of 31 years old. And we'll never see something like that again, I believe, Bob.
No, listen, times have changed. Lee hanging him up at 31 with 8 Olympias. Some guys ain't getting their pro cards until they're in their mid-30s. So There's a big difference. But the era you competed again, especially against my partner here, Lee, some people consider the greatest era of bodybuilding ever in modern era. The competition was deep. It was hard. But as we move towards this Olympia that's coming up in just a short time here, 1 week out of the Olympia, what was going through your head, Lee, in most of these Olympias? You're 1 week out of, let's say, your last Olympia.
Well, I tell you what, man, it's being the last set, I wanted to make sure it was the best set.
Right.
And I knew I was going up against stiff competition. And of course, Dorian was the new guy coming up and had size and so forth. And as I understood prior to my first meeting him, he had a good combination of balance, so I was told.
You're talking about Dorian Yates?
Yeah, Dorian Yates.
Gotcha.
Well, I had to have all of my ducks in a row. Trying to repeat an Olympia is hard enough.
Yeah. But
to do it 8 times, and everybody's expecting, something different. What is he going to bring in the way of a package this time? Then he didn't bring the last 7 Olympias. So it was some pressure in that. But to tell the truth, I really enjoyed that last contest training because I knew it was going to be the last. I didn't have no thought of going beyond that 8. So I enjoyed my training because I knew it was the end of an era for me. But that last week going in, man, I wasn't stressed out or anything like that. I kept my calm. I was in perfect peace doing it. A matter of fact, it was easier than the previous Olympias. For some reason, it felt like a lot of the pressure had been taken off because this was the last one. I'll finally get to exhale. But in doing that, I wanted to make sure all of me was left on the stage. So the training, the nutrition, the rest, all of those things, it all came together to give me what I feel was the best package I ever had.
Yeah, I was.
I mean, 200 and yeah.
I was. I witnessed that, Lee, and I've said it at nauseum that I think '91 was the best of all 8 Olympias. You were slightly off, like a lot of guys in 1990, but you came back refreshed, energized. You didn't know this, but in 1991, I won the Arnold Classic, and I made T-shirts, and on the back of my shirt it said Ray versus Haney. I was waking up and going to bed thinking about Lee Haney.
I'm gonna kill it. Rip his head off.
I was hoping you'd slip on a banana peel. But when you showed up backstage, whatever thoughts I had going into the show, they were quickly vanquished. But Dorian was the first guy since Gary Stridham in 1988 to literally, and Mike Christian, to stand toe-to-toe and eye-to-eye. You guys were shoulder to shoulder. But it really, that rivalry didn't really materialize because, to be honest, I don't think you were ever rivaled in terms of first or second. I think each of those Olympias you were in, unanimously, I think everyone conceded that you won, even though you were competing up against the new guy, Dorian. But look, you guys are probably very close to the same age, am I right? You're 60 years old now?
Oh, thanks, Sean. I appreciate that.
I think, yeah.
Did you say 50, Sean, or did you say 60?
Yeah.
November what? Your birthday's in November. What is it?
November the 11th.
I remember. Listen, me and Bob fancy ourselves as historians as well, but watching the steps that you were taking, again, it was historic because you were 31 years old, but Dorian's not that much younger than you, and he was the first guy since Gary Stridham to stand toe-to-toe. Of course, when you turned around to the rear, Gary Stridham dropped all the way down to 5th, but Dorian was actually there with you from the rear, and you actually walked off that contest stage with a 5-year Twin Labs contract, which is unheard of because most people on their way out have to figure out the rest of their moves. You went into a Twin Labs deal for 5 years, and tell us what happened, because you didn't just go quietly into the sunset. You actually made some big moves after you stopped bodybuilding. Yeah,
Sean, and that was so important, and I try to emphasize that to the younger bodybuilders, to think long term. It's not just get it today. You got to think about tomorrow. And the fact that, I was a husband and I had 2 kids to put through, to raise and all of that. So my sight was, okay, let's think future. So, I mean, when I won my first Olympia, the first thing I did, man, I bought me a home, number one, half of the money, which was $50,000 back then. Yeah. I started to buy real estate because, no more land is being made.
Right.
So that was something I looked at, thinking long term, because athletics don't last forever. And anytime your luck can change as far as injuries are concerned. So that was always my thinking. Preparing for the future. I got a wife, I got a kid. I don't break my plate when I finish eating. So I had to think in that way. And so when I stepped off the Mr. Olympia stage, it was my last one. I wanted to use my credibility. I wanted to use my faith in other areas. So, I mean, what use would an additional Mr. Olympia title, what would it mean? So here's the TV show opportunity, ESPN, Lee Haney's Championship Workout. Here's the contract with Twin Laboratories, which was fantastic. And, the Bleekman family was just incredible people to work for and to work with. And then from there, another company called Biochem, which is Country Life. I went with them. Mm-hmm. The shoe contract from Altry Shoes, I went with them. So, and then next thing Evander comes along and say, Lee, we want what you want. What does it take to have you as my coach prepping me for my first heavyweight bodybuilding, heavyweight boxing title?
Yeah, Evander Holyfield. Mm-hmm.
my career just continued to move forward, and that's what I love about, you know, that's one of the benefits of thinking forward and not trying to stay stuck in the past.
Well, Lee, before we get into the bodybuilding of today, you mentioned that you went into the last Olympia with the knowledge that this was it for you. You were calling it a day, you were hanging them up, but most people don't know why. Why did you decide that was a good time? You were young still in the sport, you were healthy, you were on top of the world with 7 at that time, soon to be 8 Olympias. So why did you decide beforehand, this is it for me?
Well, it was, well, number one, I didn't have one more. I didn't have another spot on my fireplace. Number one.
And I've seen that fireplace.
The mantle was only so big.
Very impressive.
Hey, man, they were so big.
Right.
But you know, the other thing, Bob, which I haven't had a chance to share a lot, at least back then, was that after that 7th Olympia, man, I woke up, I guess the week after, and my entire body was racked with pain. I mean, my hips were tight, my back, my shoulders. I thought I was torn beyond repair. And I said, what in the heck is happening to me? Because as all of us know as athletes, particularly when you're training on the Olympian level, that it's not your regular type of training.
Right.
It's gladiator, either do or die. And you could die in the process of tear yourself up real bad. So I was traumatized after that 7th Olympian. I really didn't know physically if I had it to do or not. But after about a month and a half of just recovering and using a sort of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday approach to training, you know, whereby each body part was given 7 full days to recover, and then using pineapple, lots of water, detoxing my body, my kidney, my liver, my joints, which is the reason why I came out with that systemic cleansing and detox program. It refreshed my entire system. So I knew the importance of detox, so it made me feel much better, and I recovered. And then the other caveat to it, Shirley, we were having a conversation, you know, my sweet wife and I said, well, baby, you know, this is the 7th Olympia, you know, that's 7 in a row. Nobody ever did that before. That's a record in itself. So what do you think, you know, as far as calling it quits with that? And, you know, Shirley was an athlete, you know, basketball, softball, track, name it, she did it. And I said, well, what do you talk about 7? You know, should that be? She looked at me and said, what are you talking about? 7? You got to do 8. What's the matter with you? It almost embarrassed me. And so that gave me enough fire to say, okay, kick it in gear. You got to do 8. On a day at 7, you got to do 8.
Yeah.
So, Lee, after the 7th Olympia, you went into the stimulate, don't annihilate via the shirt mode of operation to get ready for number 8
in Orlando, Florida. Yeah,
that's where it was born.
Stimulate, not annihilate. And you know, that's a philosophy I've always tried to maintain over the years. You know, and I got my playbook from people like Robbie Robinson, you know, Frank Zane, Chris Dickerson, Arnold, I mean, Roy Callender, the best of the best bodybuilders. You never saw these guys traumatize their bodies. I mean, all of them are still walking in great shape today because of using the proper science to train. I mean, look at you, Bob and Sean. I mean, here we are, still alive and well, because we understood early in our career that you don't have to lift the world. You know, our sport is about one of cultivating the physique, you know, structurally building it over a course of time, you know, and giving it the right nutrition. All of these things, it has allowed me to feel great at age. I'll be 61 next month. To feel great. I can still run. I can still jump. I have no joint problems. I have no knee, no hip, no back. None of that because of using that philosophy that I learned from people like Robbie Robinson.
Well, it's interesting.
Robbie's still trained.
It's interesting how that philosophy, how it does pay it forward, because you can go back in many of my 90s videos and you'll hear me at some point in time talk about stimulate, don't annihilate, which I stole from you. But that philosophy, it rang true because I never saw you photographically or in person squatting 6 plates, benching 5 plates. You didn't strike me as a Ronnie Coleman-ish type physique, or bodybuilder, I should say. You were an artist. You were cut from the same cloth as Arnold. You were building your muscles, not tearing them down and breaking. You never put yourself in harm's way, which I liked, because mind you, there weren't a whole lot of videos of us all training. You started doing that with your TV show later on, but even then, your TV show was a reflection of what you did as a professional bodybuilder, and that taught me a lot about not going into the gym and trying to do more than what I can physically do to try to be something that I wasn't. I was never going to be the biggest. So I copied that mantra that you have on your shirt there, stimulate, don't annihilate, and it served me well in retirement as well in terms of being injury-free. Thank you.
That's it.
Yeah, listen, we can all thank you for that, Lee, because prior to that, it was pretty much an annihilate type of activity. You killed yourself in the gym, you know, all that, balls to the walls, and, you know, train as hard as you can, and, you know, leave nothing on the table and all that. But when it comes to bodybuilding, that's not really what it's all about. It's actually more what you came out with. Stimulate the muscle, build the muscle, grow the muscle, but you don't have to beat yourself into the ground. And thus here you are, Lee, 61 years old, running, jumping, singing. Well, I don't know if you could sing, but, you know.
Well, wait, let me ask you something as we head into the Olympia, because these guys are walking into a $400,000 payday, which is light years from the $50,000 that you won.
I think it's awful, Sean.
Huh?
I think it's awful. They need to have some kind of retribution done so that we can get some of that money.
Listen, you took a lot of money off of a lot of people's plate,
yeah, right?
And left a lot of us hungry, wanting those Sandow trophies. Good grief.
Hey, well, listen, you got another guy going for 8.
Yes.
Oddly enough, and this Olympia coming up, T-minus a week away. Phil Heath has made his return.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Tied with Arnold. There's only 2 guys.
40 years old.
Everybody knows the stats, right?
41 years old.
40, I believe he'll be 41 at time of Olympia. But where are you, Lee, with that? Like, when you think of Phil Heath and possible, let's just say he goes ahead and he wins, and he equals that record shared by yourself and the great Ronnie Coleman. Like, do you cheer him on? Do you kind of think like, hey, you know, this is only a group for 2, or where are you at with all that, with the history?
Well, if I get close enough to it, I'm going to slip something in his water.
Guess that answers that.
Yeah, there's not enough room at the top.
Hey, man, that's just the way it is.
Yeah,
you know?
right?
It's just life, you know? Everybody's doing something, you know? So, hey, but on the serious side, I wish him the very best of success, you know? As Arnold said concerning my breaking his record, you know, records are made to be broken.
Yeah.
You know, hats off to him. So, I mean, that's how I feel about it, whether he come up victorious or not. Listen, Phil is a master at peaking. He knows how to peak, you know, so he it's not something that, but can the body peak again? It generally takes youth to peak time and time again. You know, the body receptors and those kinds of things. Is his body still up to that? Because in age, like with any athletics, it does play a role. I mean, Dexter defied the law, but notice Dexter never had a time away.
Right.
You see, that's the difference, your time away. Dexter stayed on top of it just as Albert Becker stayed on top of it. They didn't take a year off or any type of surgeries or none of those kinds of things.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see. But should he come up victorious, then listen, I'll be the first to shake his hand and congratulate him.
Now, just to give some perspective, Sean, to the viewers out there, Phil Heath, when he's on that Olympia stage, and again, we're going to speculate, let's just say he wins, okay, is going to be 10 years older than what Lee was when he retired with 8. Just to give some perspective on Lee and how young he was. He had 10 more years that he could have been, I mean, surely never would have signed off on it. We know that. But just to give perspective, 10 years younger. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing in terms of the age gap. But I believe Ronnie Coleman and Chris Dickerson both won the Mr. Olympia title over the age of 41 years old. So right. it's not impossible to win it at an older age. As a matter of fact, most of the athletes are competing much longer. You are the exception to the rule. The reason why you get so much more respect from me is because you ran into a juggernaut in Dorian Yates. Listen, that wasn't necessarily a walk in the park for you, because the guy went on to win 6 Olympia titles. He was a legitimate contender for the throne, and a lot of people wanted to see you come back in 92 to validate the victory in 91 that never materialized. So all we can do is kind of speculate over who's the greatest during that time, because Dorian was getting started and you were on the way out. But even when you were on the way out, I believe you were younger than Dorian was when you decided to go. Bring us up to speed real quick with where you're at, because bodybuilding has been very, very, very good to you, but you've worked you've worked these 8 Olympia titles into much more than just being the best in the world.
And Sean, that's what it's all about, man. You know, you gain your level of success and influence to use it in such a way to impact the world for good. You know, and I don't know if you've heard me share this before. When I was 17, I got on my knees one night before going to bed and I prayed. I said, Lord, if you see fit to make me the best sport in the world, and I want to be the best, I said, I will go before the world and give you the praise and the glory and use my talents for good. And I am a miracle. I mean, to win a Mr. Olympia one time is a miracle, but 8 times, that's almost impossible. And so I know from which my gift came. And so I'm also very aware that I'm to use this gift to impact the world for good. That's why Haney's Harvest House, the mentoring program for young people, is so important. That's why the certification program, the International Association of Fitness Science, to teach proper training, proper science of training, so that a lot of these athletes don't injure themselves and tear themselves up. All of that is extremely important. And then, of course, you know, my Lee Haney Nutrition. I came along and created the first 7-day systemic cleansing and detox to clean the liver, the kidney, the bloodstream, the urinary system, designed for everybody, but specifically for the bodybuilding community. All of these things to help us as athletes. And now we have the Lee Haney Games. This is the 6th year coming up. We had around 300 athletes, and not talking about crossovers, 300 athletes from all over the United States. And man, what a joy to see these young athletes and of all ages to come in and enjoy a sport that they really love, because bodybuilding is a camaraderie, a brotherhood and sisterhood like nothing else. We're connected all over the world. I mean, what a joy. You got friends in Hong Kong, I got friends in Japan, I got friends in Australia and New Zealand. This would not have happened had it not been for bodybuilding. So I love my sport. I appreciate all the people that has made this sport possible for us, and we get to be kids living a fantasy and at the same time making a living.
Lee, I really do believe, Bob, that Lee does love the sport. He named his daughter Olympia.
Listen,
I mean,
that says it all right there. But listen, you can.
Yeah, my ninth Olympia.
Your 9th Olympia. That was
right,
it.
Your 9th Olympia title. Listen, everybody knows that. Anybody who's met Lee, and we've had the good fortune of being good friends with him for many years, all you got to do is get Lee talking, and you can hear the passion he still holds for bodybuilding. And I'm going to ask you, Lee, to take that passion. I want you to look into your crystal ball. I want you to gaze into those 8 Sandow trophies that sit on your mantle and give us your prediction of this Olympia coming up. Now, we're going to give you a little bit of a help because we know you follow the sport, but here's the players, okay? You got Brandon Curry, the returning champ, defending reigning champion. Phil Heath, 7-time champ, looking to equal you at 8.
Coming out of retirement.
Hadi Chupan. We had Flex Lewis. Unfortunately, he had to bow out due to some injury concerns, so we're not going to, unfortunately, see that materialize this year, but I'm sure he'll be back next year. We've got Big Rami. Just got a special invite, so he'll be back looking for the title. Dexter Jackson competing in his last Olympia. He's calling it a day on stage. So
William Bonac.
And William Bonac, we can't forget, because he's been Mr. Consistent, second place, kind of the Sean Ray of his era in terms of consistency. So these are your main players, Lee. What's the prediction?
I tell you what, the most dangerous guy on the Olympia stage, as I was, because I couldn't break my plate when I finished eating. I had to take care of wife, kids, education funds, diapers.
Right.
So that makes Brandon Curry a murderer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When he steps on stage, he's not just coming by himself.
Right.
He's coming in such a way that nobody's going to steal his joy or take his cookie.
Work with me here, Bob.
What do you got?
How you feeling, champ? How's everything? How's the health?
I'm doing good.
All right, man. We just got done talking with Lee Haney and Jay Cutler, and we were talking about this year's Mr. Olympia weekend. Bob's eager. He's trying to go out there and get these champions to predict a winner.
Yeah, buddy. Who's winning, Ronnie?
He said, who's winning?
The same guy won last year.
Same guy.
So you got, now, keep in mind, you got Phil Heath returning this year.
I think Ronnie knows that.
Yeah.
Quantify why you have Brandon Curry being a two-time champion this weekend.
Well, it's kind of hard to beat the defending champion.
Right. You would know.
Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty much what I'm going for. You know, he was okay last year. That was because he had done the arm. Your body only peaks once a year.
Now, Ronnie, if Phil Heath goes in and wins, he's going to tie your record with Lee Haney.
I was hoping that he would do it. He would have done that 2 years ago, but.
So, are you rooting him on, or are you want to try to keep that just with you and Lee?
I'm always rooting him on, but it's a little couple of years too late now, though.
Yeah, Lee Haney said that Brandon Curry has more at stake because he's got a family at home. He's training over in Kuwait. He's got bills to pay, and he wants to hold on to that title. Is that a bigger motivation for him than Phil Heath coming off of a 2-year layoff and trying to make history?
No, the biggest motivation going for Brandon right now is he won last year, and he know how it feels to be Mr. Olympia, and he don't ever want to lose that feeling again. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing he got going for him. And then all that other stuff Lee Haney said.
Well, Ronnie, clearly you were known not just for your overall physique, but your back in particular. They say Olympias are won from the back. So do you see Brandon beating Phil Heath from the back?
Yeah. I mean, I just see Brandon just winning the show.
Okay.
Because of all the stuff I just said, basically. That's more of a motivation and more of a driving factor than anything in the world.
We're going to find out. We're walking into the 56th weekend with Joe Weider, Mr. Olympia Championships. Ronnie, the supplement company going good? The family's good? Your health good? How we doing over there in Texas?
Yeah, everything's good. You know, it could be better. You know.
Yeah.
Everybody, I think, suffered a little bit during the pandemic and everything shut down. You know, sales kind of just went completely dried up.
Right.
Ronnie, you got all your body parts back together. Any more surgeries, or are you done?
No. I'm still working on all that.
Oh, boy.
That's not going to never be done. My back is still. Got a herniated disc, and it's straight, too, so I got a couple of bad things right now.
Well, we just went over your entire career, and arguably, Ronnie, what you did is more historic than what Lee Haney did at 31 years old, winning those 8 consecutive Mr. Olympias. But coming from the back of the pack and beating a lineup of Hall of Fame bodybuilders year in and year out, and when you stopped, you were the winningest pro bodybuilder in history. I got to ask you, because I was there in 2002. When Gunther beat you, he snuck up and beat you at the GNC Championships. That was not one of the worst experiences for you. I heard rumor had it that you said that you were more upset that Lee Priest actually beat you in your career. Is that true?
Let me see. I think I was more upset with the Gunther loss, to be honest with you. I was pretty upset about Lee. You know what, to be honest with you, you might be right there. Because after Lee Priest beat me, I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
I went to my room and said I was done. You know, I wasn't going back no more. And girlfriend of mine talked me back into it.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately for all of us, she talked you into it.
I got real mad, got real upset.
And went on.
The weights.
Clearly, you got the short end of the stick, like Lee.
Yeah.
Well, Ronnie, we want to thank you for calling in. We're sorry we had technical difficulties, man, and we're going to see you this weekend at the 56th Joe Weider Mr. Olympia Championships in Las Vegas. Thank you for calling in, buddy.
All right, no problem.
All right, yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. Lightweight. All right. Ronnie Coleman still doing the business of body. He's got like an army of kids at his house, man.
Yeah, I mean, you can. He's got 10 of them, so I don't know how many's still in the house. But you know, it's sad to hear. I mean, he's still fighting the fight. I mean, he's still got surgeries ahead. I mean, you can tell, you know, that thing still ain't right in there, and that's too bad to hear because, like I say, you'll never meet a guy. I mean, he'll still smile, bro. He's still got a smile on his face when you start talking bodybuilding and all that. And he's had to endure. I don't think I know anybody that's had to endure more surgeries than Ronnie Coleman.
Well, hey, listen, things could be a whole lot worse. He couldn't have had 8 Sandow trophies and wound up with the injuries and not being able to take care of his family.
Well, that's kind of what he says. And we've both interviewed Ronnie many times, and you'll ask him, like, do you have any regrets when you think back to that 800-pound squat? And he goes, yeah, I regret that I didn't do another rep or two because, you know, I can't go back to that now. But, you know, he don't regret nothing.
Nah, well, the good thing about it is, man, he's one of the legendary bodybuilders of all time. As we talk about Larry Scott and we talk about Sergio Oliva and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Frank Zane, Franco Colombo, Samir Banu, Chris Dickerson, Dorian Yates, Lee Haney, and of course Dexter Jackson, Brandon Curry, Phil Heath,
Jay Cutler. Unfortunately, we've already had one drop out, which is Flex Lewis. And that's a notable one because a lot of people had Flex Lewis in the running with Brandon Curry, the current champ, and the returning champ, Phil Heath.
Right.
So this was a huge blow to Flex, of course. I mean, you know, with his fighting spirit, he was going to do everything, and I'm sure he's already said he's already fought his wife and his trainer on this one, and doctors, because he's got that fighting mentality.
But he did mention 2021, so we can't rule him out.
Well, listen, Flex is a lot of things, but he's smart, if nothing else, and he's young. He has made the right move, because everybody wants to know, did he make the right move? Should he just push forward? Listen, all that rah-rah, well, you got to be an athlete, you got to just ignore that, you got to push forward. No, listen, that don't mean a hill of beans.
Got to be smart.
When you're putting your career in jeopardy.
And your life.
Listen, he's got a family now, Sean. He's not 20-something anymore, and it's just him. And listen, you're young. You'll overcome it. You know, you can do that. Listen, he's in his 30s now. He's a family man.
It's a business.
It's a business. So you got to think long term. And I think he's made the smart move. Put it on the shelf this year. Listen, he's not losing nothing. He hasn't stepped on stage yet.
No, he's not lost anything.
Put it in gear for next year.
Yeah, well, we'll see about next year.
Ronnie Coleman, 8 Olympia Sandows to his name, equaling the great Lee Haney. Pretty elite club, bro.
Not only is it elite, but it goes along with all the other victories around the world.
Yeah, we're not even counting.
Ronnie was one of the winningest bodybuilders of all time.
Until Dexter, right?
And
Dexter's got such longevity that, I mean, nobody's ever going to beat that record.
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen.
So, correct. The only guy that can equal this record is competing this year, and that's Phil Heath.
Yeah,
the gift is back. Is that enough motive? Listen, if that can't motivate you, like people keep saying, like, well, he's been gone for 2 years. Listen, he's going for history. Forget about everything else.
Right.
He's the only guy we're going to see, more than likely. The chances of you and I being around long enough on this earth to see somebody else amass 8 Olympia titles is very little.
Yeah, you know, it reminds me of the days in the 70s. You were just a kid then, Bob.
Just a kid.
1970, 71, where you saw Ali come back. You know, he had that 3-year prison exile thing that
the Muslim war thing going on.
And he got rusty, and he had to come back, and he had to go up against Smokin' Joe Frazier, who was the reigning champion. Now, the Soul Brother #1 reminds me of Smokin' Joe. Brandon Curry, the reigning defending champion, the blue-collar bodybuilder who had to come from nothing. He's got to prove himself. He's got to prove himself once again. He's Joe Frazier, and Muhammad Ali is Phil Heath, coming back to recapture his title, some ring rust, and he's going to have to rise to the occasion. But when we go back to that fight, Ali got knocked down in the 15th round and didn't win the competition because Smokin' Joe never took his foot off the gas. So are we about to see that?
No, this ain't going 15. Here's the difference, Sean. This ain't going 15 rounds, number one, okay? It's going to go 1 round. And the difference is going to be when they turn around.
That's it.
With all due respect to the champ, because Brandon Curry's a good champ, and I've said this before. The difference in this fight is Brandon Curry's never beaten Phil Heath. Right. But Phil Heath has beaten Brandon Curry a whole bunch of times.
We can say the same about Ali and Frazier.
We could, right? The difference is Ali did not face the Smokin' Joe that was coming up. Much like Phil has not faced Brandon Curry as he is now.
Correct.
He faced a very young Brandon Curry who needed to get his physique correct. His upper body is so cartoonish that you think his legs ain't small in person when you look at him.
The dimensions.
But from a visual standpoint, when you're looking on that Olympia stage, yes, his upper body overshadows his legs. he's actually brought his legs up last year to win that title, and you saw a pretty complete physique.
Absolutely.
But the difference is detail. Phil's got that freaky detail from
3D detail.
Well, like you mentioned, if shows are won from the back, Sean, which we can debate on a different show, if bodybuilding shows are truly won from the back, then who's beating Phil Heath?
Well, it's going to be questionable, and we're going to witness it in person. I remember Sean Roden beat Phil Heath, and so it's not
But
impossible.
he didn't beat him from the back.
No, that's the thing. You're right. He didn't beat him from the back, but at the end of the day, most people aren't going to be talking about how they beat him. It's where's the Sandow Trophy sitting? And Sean Roden has one. He did it the same way Ronnie Coleman did the impossible back in 1998. We could be witnessing history here. If Phil Heath wins number 8, that's history. If Brandon Curry defeats Phil Heath and retains the title, that's history, because both of those accomplishments are just so big. The stakes are so high this year. And then you take all the other X factors. Any one of those guys could be the next Ronnie Coleman jumping up from the back of the pack to win.
Listen, Dexter Jackson's the only other guy in that stage that's got a Sandow on his mantle.
That would be a huge conversation.
Of course it would.
Yeah.
But you can't discount it. The guy has had enough to be Mr. Olympia. It's his last. You talk about motivation, right? Because that's really what we're talking about here. Who's got more motivation to bring their best? Is it Brandon Curry? It's not his fault that the lineup didn't have all the players. Okay,
right.
Brandon Curry did his job, which was to beat whoever showed up. You don't take that away from him. You don't discount it. But he's human like the rest of us. He wants to beat Phil Heath, because if he beats Phil Heath,
validation.
Holy crap, bro! You talk about putting the feather in your cap and validating you for life. You beat a 7-time Mr. Olympia.
What's even more crazy about that conversation as we go round and round about the number 1 players, you gotta feel for William Bonac in the first runner-up. It's like, hey guys, look at me, I'm here. I'm bona fide. I won the Arnold Classic. I beat Dexter Jackson. I almost beat Brandon Curry a year ago. You're not even talking about me in the conversation. So when you talk about somebody screaming for attention, this guy is gonna have to pull out all the stops. Well, and he's worthy of the attention. It's just that he hasn't been in the conversation.
And that's a tough discussion to have, because again, you go back to the scoreboard, okay? None of those guys you just mentioned has ever scored a point against Phil Heath. Now, that's notable.
Man, you're taking me all the way back to 1998 when Ronnie Coleman came out of nowhere. He literally came out of nowhere. Well, it happens.
I'll tell you what, let's go down that road, Sean. Do you see anybody in this lineup that could be another Ronnie Coleman? Somebody that can come out of nowhere, that has the tools to challenge for the title against Phil Heath and the current Mr. Olympia and a former Mr. Olympia.
It's different for me, because again, it takes me back. When was 1998? How many years ago was that?
A long time ago.
It was a long time ago. So 1998, going into New York City, I thought I was going to be the chosen one.
Yeah.
I was coming off a 2nd place in 96, 3rd place in 97, move over Dorian Yates. I got to beat Kevin Levrone. Flex Wheeler wasn't in the Olympia in 1997.
That's right.
I got to beat Kevin Levrone. Flex Wheeler's coming back, and I got to deal with Nasser El Somebody, who just got 2nd in 1997. So the bodybuilder, in their mind's eye, William Bonac has got to be thinking, this is my chance. This is my shot. Hadi Chupin, I'm not coming from Iran for nothing. I was People's Champion last year. I got call-outs. He's got to believe he's Mr. Olympia. And, of course, Phil Heath has to believe, I'm not coming back here for nothing.
Well, I mean, listen, let's go down that road, okay? Bonac, Mr. Consistent, right? He's like the new Dexter Jackson.
He's had a great run.
Again, Dexter in his final Olympia. Again, no more motivation than that, right? Ruli Winkler was the people's champion.
He's got a lot to prove because he keeps getting injured. He better step up.
But you know what? He had enough that the people actually voted for him above everybody else.
Yeah, it's been
Big Ramy is in by special invite.
If Big Ramy can stay healthy, Ramy is his own worst enemy dealing with these coaches.
Well, not to his fault, but he's had all a year to prepare.
Yeah, but he's also a professional. The bottom line is Ramy has to show up.
Yeah.
Ramy has been a promise that hasn't been kept for
Is this it for Ramy?
If Ramy doesn't pull this thing together, Olympia weekend, he doesn't have to win to gain the respect. He's got to be respectable. We cannot see him come in watery. We can't see him get beat by guys that should never beat him. And he's got to be at his all-time best, or this is it in terms of talking about Big Ramy. Well, there's a lot of pressure.
You competed against Lee Labrada.
Yes.
But Hunter Labrada's on the Olympia stage. So guess what?
Great.
You've got a father-son. You're actually going to be making some color commentary on your rival's son.
This is amazing because right now Hunter Labrada is on the cover of Muscular Development magazine. He won the Tampa Pro Show, which was his first outing. He's a former national champion. We're kind of talking about the lines of a Lee Haney. You know, you come out of the box and you win these shows. He's definitely a guy that's going to be in the conversation. I think he's a front runner for being in the top 6 in his first Olympia.
I think so.
Now, whether he can improve upon that, there's a lot of pressure on a guy that young and that raw in terms of not having the muscle maturity, but the lineup is right for him to make the top 6, and what a feat that would be for his first shot.
Is he this generation's Ronnie Coleman? Could he go? I mean, listen, it's his first Olympia.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't had a guy since Phil, I believe, who debuted in his first Olympia, and boom, I mean, he was up there right in the top.
Yeah, he was fourth in his first Olympia.
In
and then he got
contention,
second.
yes. So I think Hunter Labrada could be that. Listen, he's got all the tools. He's got all of his father's attributes, but he's bigger.
Bigger, yeah. And he's young enough.
Yep.
And the thing is, he's already suffered one injury to his pec, like a lot of other bodybuilders have, so he's got to be careful not to try to get it all too soon. But he's young enough that he will be there for some time if he chooses to be. Now, Bob, I say that because some athletes, you know, they crash and burn. It just comes too hard. Keon Pearson just now qualifies for the competition by winning the Chicago 212. He's all the rave coming into this weekend's show, and somewhere along the way, he's mentally and physically burnt out, and he's going to watch. This can happen to some of the best of them.
Well, we're talking about people that could make that leap. We just saw Akeem Williams win the Chicago Pro.
Correct.
In Atlanta, Georgia. Follow along, folks.
Back in October, yes.
So I look at his physique and I think to myself, this guy's underrated. Like, he's big. He's got slabs of muscle. His upper body is in touch with his leg. Like, he's got the small waist. He's got the big upper body. He's got the matching legs. And he gets in really good condition. Now, his Achilles heel has always been his back. Especially between the waist and like his neck. Like
he's got high lats.
It just doesn't seem like he gets the same level of conditioning from the back he does for the front. Almost like Lionel Bayeki.
Correct. Thick skin, very thick.
But he seems to have gotten that down now where, listen, he had a very hard-fought battle with Justin Rodriguez, who's also a new guy in the Olympia this year, and he wins. Okay, they went to, listen, Big Steve put these guys.
It was a heavyweight bout. Yes,
they had 5 pose downs. Okay, to figure this one out. Akeem ends up winning his show, qualifies for the Olympia. But is that a guy you see, Sean? I see this guy moving up this year.
Well, I see Akeem making a splash if he continues to train on the lighter side. Right, we're coming in from October to December. It's a long run. It's about 8-9 weeks. He's got to hang on to that conditioning. Don't blow up. Train a little bit lighter. Work for refinement, because when you have that thick, dark skin, a la Victor Richards, it takes a little bit more to see the grainy detail. He was getting very close, but once again, it comes back to what Lee Haney said. You're only as good as the guys you stand next to. And Justin is not the top tier guy that he narrowly beat. It was a tough decision. So now you got to step these guys up against the A-listers. And the A-listers are going to bring a different level. Juan Morel, who won over in Japan to qualify. Nobody's talking about Juan Morel. Quietly worked with Chris Cormier over there in New York. Chris has been going back and forth from California training Juan Morel, which I think Juan Morel needed. He needed a trainer coach, not a coach on Skype or on Zoom from a distance or a guru. He needed someone to go in there and train him right. And Juan's going to have to compete against Akeem, the 2 New Yorkers going against each other. I don't know where Justin will wind up, but I can tell you that the future looks the brightest out of all of those guys for Hunter Labrada, and I think it has a lot more to do with youth.
Yeah, I think.
Not to mention the Hall of Fame.
I think Hunter. I'm going to listen. I'll put it right out there. I absolutely believe Hunter Labrada will be in the top 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Now listen, he's got some competition. You got Steve Kuklo, who's been there, and
6th place last year,
and he carries a whole lot of size. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got guys like him. You got the Canadians that are in there.
Yep.
All right. We've mentioned them. Those guys are going to be in there. Justin Rodriguez is going to be in there. So you've got a whole bunch of competition in that middle of the pack. So it's not going to be easy.
2 or 3 guys are in line to make history.
This is it. Listen, there's only been 14 men.
15.
15 men, sorry.
Let me correct you again.
Thank you.
Yep.
15 men in the state. So in 56 years, only 15 men have held this title.
Amazing.
So it's as prestigious as it gets. They all know what's on the line, Sean, okay? Everybody's got their own motivation.
Yep.
But this is really going to come down to, I don't want to say who wants it more. This ain't a football game where you can just kind of, you get some fired up and you have the game of your life. Listen, bodybuilding is strategic. It's not something that you're in, for the last week. It's months and months of prep. It's a whole year of prep. It's 2 years of prep.
Right.
For Phil Heath, who's trying to get the title back.
Yeah. In the conditions that they're doing it under right now, the whole COVID 2020.
And that's a whole nother thing, which we haven't even covered, and we don't have time in this segment for it, but a whole other animal. You know what? Bodybuilders at the Olympia level, they'll find a way around. Listen, they all got gyms that they either own, a part of, they know the owner, they got their own key.
Right.
So I don't think that's really been a factor. It's more a factor for the guys coming from overseas.
Sure.
Like Hadi Chupan, like Big Ramy, and listen, guess who else is coming from overseas?
Nathan Diasha.
Nope. Brandon Curry.
Oh, yes, from Kuwait.
Listen, Brandon Curry is overseas. He put himself overseas.
That's right.
And you wonder if that strategy is going to pay off, or that could be a problem, because he's got to get back over here.
Well, it's worked out for him so far, and to a person, all of those Olympia champions, Jay Cutler, Lee Haney, and Ronnie Coleman, they all said that they were ecstatic at the acquisition of the Olympia by Jake Wood, the production of the Olympia team, and Dan Solomon's vision producing the event for the weekend, and Tim Gardner, all the pieces of the puzzle. They wish they were competing in this competition because of the people running the event. So that's huge.
Well, listen,
huge endorsement.
We've been in an arena for years. An arena's cool. There's certain things about it that I will miss. I mean, the enormity of it, the grandioseness of an arena, but a theater is made for bodybuilding
and production.
We grew up with it. That's how we started, whether it was in a high school auditorium, but the curtain, the ambiance, the seating, the theater, it's all there, bro. And traditionally, theater seating has way better lighting. Listen, we have to create that lighting for all those people out there. Because, listen, we hear all kinds of stuff on the internet from they need to standardize the lighting. The lighting needs to be the same at every IFBB show. Yeah, except you can't do that for 1,000 different reasons of production.
Correct.
Bringing in lights, different thing, different heights. And listen, forget about all that stuff, guys.
These guys are going to be loving
There's legitimate reasons why you can't do that.
Right. Thank you to all of our great champions for calling in. The Mr. Olympia winners, man. Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman, and Lee Haney. That's 20 Sandow trophies that these guys possess between the three of them. And we're going to find out if somebody's going to wind up taking it off of Brandon Curry, or we're going to be talking about a stranger that's coming to it. I don't like to make predictions. I don't like to judge. I'm a critic. That's what I do. I criticize.
Good Lord,
But we're going to find out. You guys got to tune in and watch us as we make the call. It's going to be 17th to the 20th. For Bob Chick, Lee Haney, Jay Cutler, and the big nasty Ronnie Coleman here at Monday Night Muscle, we're out.